This conference will now be recorded.
When it hits 6 o'clock, Jackson, we've got everything streaming and working and recording.
Wonderful. I have 6 o'clock on mine, so with that, we'll go ahead and start. We'll go ahead and call to order the December 16th, 2020 APC public hearing. First item on the agenda is the roll call. Zach?
All right, when I call your name, let me know you're here. Jackson Bogan.
Here.
Carl Griffin. Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Roland Winger. Gary Schroeder. Here. Jake Gray. Tracy Brown.
Here.
Kathy Parker.
Here.
Lisa Dellum.
Here.
Here, JD, could you mute? We're getting a bunch of feedback on yours. There we go. All right. Perry Brown.
Here.
Jerry Reynolds. Vicky Pearl.
Here.
Carla Snodgrass.
Here.
Diana Looper. And I believe Diana's here. She may be having some technical difficulties.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Jones.
Here.
Larry Leverins.
Here.
Michelle Dennis.
I do it. Here.
And we do have a quorum. Thank you.
It's
Jackson, I also think that Roland Winger is here now.
Here. Thank you, Sally. Zach.
Real quick, do we have Carl on the line?
He indicated he would be at attending the meeting.
Okay, well, we'll continue if that's okay and move on. And then when he comes on, we'll jump back. We got a little special night for him. So with that, we'll move to the briefing session. Sally?
Nothing new to add that's not on the agenda, just the S4963 Casa Bella minor subdivision needs to be continued to the January 6th executive committee meeting, but that's 2021, not 2012.
Thank you. So on to the approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the November 18th, 2020 meeting as submitted.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? That carries. We'll go right into new business, and if we'll start with item B on the agenda, primary approval extension request.
I move we hear and approve of the request for a belated primary approval extension for Elliott Industrial Park S2351.
I second.
Don?
Okay. This is Elliott Industrial subdivision that was started 24 years ago. It's located at the southeast corner of Brady and Concord. It's also the location of Henry Poor Lumber. But the proposal back then was for 8 lots, and 3 of those lots have been recorded so far. The construction plans were approved back in 2000. Everything has been installed, of course, and has been accepted by the city that was required for the subdivision. The Staff has no concerns for extending this another 2 years. We would recommend then approval contingent on any applicable conditions from 1998 or whatever that was, 24 years ago to 1996. So yeah, staff recommends approval for a 2-year extension.
Wonderful. Petitioner's representative wish to speak on this?
Tim Ballanseeper with T-Bird Design here.
We can hardly hear you, Tim.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having some electronic problems again.
There
Can
you
you hear
go.
me now? Yeah, we basically don't have any objections to staff's recommendations, and we would go through the city to get any approval. We've recently had the owner indicated that they would be looking at finishing this out possibly in 2021. So we're back here just to make sure that it's still valid. So request approval.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Sally, anyone there wishing to speak?
Nobody in the room.
We will now pause for 1 minute for public comment.
I've got my timer going.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll check in with Ryan to see if anything's come in on the social media sites.
Yes, YouTube doesn't appear to be working, but Facebook is, and there are no public comments.
Okay, with that, we'll move on. This was in an email Tuesday, 12/15 from Diana Trader at 2:40 p.m. And the link is the Elliott Industrial Park that we will be voting on. If you would, oh, actually, before we do that, we need to do it by roll call, don't we, Zach?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. When I call your name, please confirm or signify your vote by saying approve or deny. Jackson Bogan.
Approve.
Carl Griffin. Absent. Tom Murtaugh.
Approve.
Roland Winger.
Approve.
Gary Schroeder.
Approve.
Jake Gray. Absent. Tracy Brown.
Approve.
Kathy Parker.
Approve.
Lisa Dillon.
Approve.
Harry Brown.
Approve.
Jerry Reynolds. Absent. Vicky Pearl.
Approve.
Carla Snodgrass.
Approve.
Diana Looper. And I'm sorry, Diana, I didn't hear you.
Approve.
Thank you. Greg Jones.
Approve.
Larry Leverance.
Approve.
Michelle Dennis.
Approve.
14 votes in favor. That is approved. As Jackson said, you do have a written ballot from Tuesday. Get those in, and Don will let us know when he has them all. Thank you.
Jackson, and Zach, I think maybe Vicky Pearl is on now.
She voted.
Ah, okay. I missed that, sorry.
Yep, Thanks for catching that.
I've
but-
got 13 responses, all for approval. I'll leave the ballots open if if someone's having trouble.
Thanks, Don.
I'm having trouble. Everything has vanished from my computer. Working
no.
on it.
Well, you work on that. We'll move on. Like you said, he'll leave that open, so we can come back to that if we need to. Gary, if you would, for the motion for the continuance.
I move to continue S 4963 Casa Bella minor subdivision, minor sketch to the January 6th, 2021 Executive Committee meeting.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Oh, opposed?
Aye.
To confirm all the ayes before, I think we're for the favors, not the nays, correct? Did we have any nays? Thank you. On to the public hearing, which is none. We do have some administrative matters.
Yes, Ryan's going to take over on the rental report.
Real quick, Ryan, let me see is Doc on here by chance? Okay.
Doesn't appear to be. Okay, you want me to carry on here then?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, I guess Kathy, if you could do a full page on that one. Where's that magic button? There you go. See if that does the trick. Okay, that'll work. Okay, well, we've this year was going to be a year when we're not going to do the portion of the report where we have a survey with the landlords. We've been trying to do that every other year, and so this is sort of the off year. And boy, it's been an off year. So, but anyway, there's good news to report in here. I'll just kind of go through some of the charts and some of our findings here. Obviously, we've got the census this year, and so we'll have some real numbers to report as opposed to projections. But as you can see, the projections have been very steady, slow and steady in terms of population growth. Purdue population growth, however, as you can see, has been very dramatic. I think just their recruiting and the fact that the tuition is flatlined is really making the university attractive, and it is paying off, and it's going to put development pressure on us as it has been, and this sees no sign of abating. Obviously, I do acknowledge at the end of the report, no need to go to that slide yet, Kathy, you can just linger there. Obviously the pandemic effects are still being felt, and so it's too early to tell to see which way things are going to go. Obviously, Purdue has opened up online learning in a very robust fashion. If that catches on, that may have a chilling effect on this. Regardless of how much the population is growing, how many of them are actually physically in Greater Lafayette living in apartments. So I think going into the next school year, we're going to try to isolate that group and see if there is how much of the student body is actually present in the community as opposed to being elsewhere. And so at this point, it's just sort of worthy of note, and it's something we're going to keep an eye on. But the growth is continuing unabated, and this year was even higher than last year. So, housing, Purdue University housing is starting to flatline a little bit. They did build roughly 1,300 off-campus beds recently, and they're up to almost 15,000 bed spaces when you account for both on campus and then units university housing is leasing off campus. And so that grand combination there gives us that total. So the university has been increasing their off campus leasing, and that obviously puts a little added development pressure to the private sector as they make moves to fulfill that potential growing demand. Let's go on to the next one. And if at any point anyone has a question, go ahead and interrupt. So then we isolate the fraternity sororities. We're trying to capture that student group that is living within this red boundary, otherwise known as the C permit parking boundary. The upshot is if you reside within this boundary, you can't get a commuter permit and park on campus. And that is, routinely policed by Purdue Transportation Services. They do make exceptions for special cases, and so but that's a very much a small minority. As you know, a couple years ago, we got this. We partnered with Purdue to expand this permit boundary into Lafayette. It just didn't make sense that people living across the street from the transit hub over there in the Centennial neighborhood could drive to school. And so we made some adjustments there into Lafayette's downtown. That's a couple years ago. Okay, go on to the next one, please. We did an analysis of those people that are trying to pull out that group that are commuting, that live outside the boundary. And so we have the number of C permits issued on campus listed so that we can kind of isolate those students, find out where they are. Generally speaking, we report on West Lafayette's rental inspection program data, and you can see obviously we had some increases last year with all the new units coming online in and around the Chauncey Village area, and so that's reflected in this data. Let's keep on trucking here. Then we get into the main part of the report, the HUD data that we've been reporting on now for many years. These are all the census tracts that we included in this analysis, and these core tracts here. Let's keep on going. And you'll see we sort of separate them by the West Lafayette area that does include areas outside of the city limits, and ditto for the Lafayette area. We sort of just generalize since the census tracts aren't coterminous with city limit boundaries. But you can see there's a lot of stability, and on the West Lafayette side, some significant drops. Although it's not that in 2016 the vacancy rate was particularly high, but these are essentially averages of these years since we have quarterly data information, and we've seen some positive developments there. And then for Lafayette area, it's been pretty steady. Go ahead and keep going. We decided to add a little nuance to this year's report by essentially separating out what we're terming suburban and urban tracts. I'm sort of using those terms loosely. We're just, we're talking about inner core census tracts versus the areas that surround that core. And so as a staff, we sort of made this determination here on this map. The darker blue color there is the core areas for West Lafayette, and then the darker yellow colors is the core areas of Lafayette. Roughly falls in line with the urban sewer boundary, the boundaries that we have in the zoning ordinance. And so we wanted to sort of separate out and see what the split is between what we would term urban and suburban, or inner and outer parts of the community. So let's go on to the next set of charts. And you can see kind of the spread there between, with urban vacancies are pretty stable. There's in the West Lafayette area, in those core tracts, not a lot of fluctuation. That speaks to a pretty healthy market, that it's a very desirable place to be. So regardless of the condition of the unit, it's people want to be there if they can afford it, if they can find a place. And so the vacancies remain pretty low. And it's all pretty intuitive, but this data sort of backs up that assertion. So, and then for the suburban tracts, it's looking healthier for West Lafayette. They've been trending downward. Not that they were particularly high to begin with, but there's it definitely speaks to some stability, and even the outer areas in the West Lafayette tracts are certainly desirable places where the vacancy level is obviously reflecting that attractiveness. Okay, let's keep on going. Let's check out Lafayette. Lafayette, its core tracts have always been the higher ones. That's why it's skewed the overall vacancy rate for Lafayette. But you can kind of see the interplay between the outer and urban tracts. The outer parts of Lafayette have always had a pretty historically lower vacancy rate with this HUD Postal Service data than the inner tracts, and that's been a pretty consistent phenomenon. And I think a lot of it has to do with just units that need to be rehabilitated, no longer desirable, and there's room for lots of investment and improvement in the older parts of Lafayette where there are vacancies. Let's keep on going. And then just a general conclusion, we've made an assertion over the last couple of years now of sort of having a pause on major student rental development in and around campus after all of the units that were put on the market last year, and in an abundance of caution to make sure the market was not overly saturated. What this data is showing, and also data that we've acquired that is reflected in the second appendix of this report, is showing is that even among the newer units, they're with their first year of opening, and despite the pandemic as well, the vacancy rates are still pretty low, and so this is kind of the first wave of data that's supporting the notion that maybe that pause potentially could be lifted or eased off of, that given Purdue's continued growth and the low vacancies in these core critical areas, certainly on the west side, that there's opportunities there for possible future projects. That said, again, I end with the pandemic because we can't ignore it. What becomes of higher education on Purdue University as a result of this is still unfolding, and so we just got to keep an eye on it and make sure that our policy statements are, as I say here at the end, in alignment with any emerging trends. And right now we're waiting to see which way the wind's going to blow. So I suppose stay tuned. We'll see what next year's report delivers. So, and then the last slide there is basically the data that we accumulated from West Lafayette. They were able to get some willing landlords of a variety of densities to kind of give up some unit occupancy data. We don't call them out specifically here. There's no point in doing that. So we protect their confidentiality, and but we sort of break it up in terms of units that are 100 units or more, or complexes that are 100 units or more, and then sort of a mid-range and then a lower density. So you see quite a spread there. And these are some pretty healthy numbers. This is a bit of a trust but verify situation. We have no way of verifying these situations. We weren't actually out there looking in windows. These are reported by the owners themselves or their landlord, management companies. But we always feel with a big enough spread asking these sorts of questions, we're probably getting pretty close to the truth. And so this data is reflecting the fall 2020. So they're coming into the new school year with the pandemic at full steam, and these are the commitments they got during that time, and these are good numbers to see. And so we will wait and see if this continues as in the coming year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. On those vacancy rates, is there a range that we consider healthy? Or a range where, like, if the vacancy was too low, we'd be concerned, or was too high, we'd be concerned?
We really haven't developed a methodology to establish what you say, like healthy, poor, okay ranges. Obviously you want to get the higher the better in these situations, but I kind of consider, given the fluctuations and how students come and go, what I've seen over the years of doing these is, when something is 75% or greater, that's pretty good. When you look at, all of the units we've surveyed in the past and complexes and so forth. And so, especially when we get kind of over the 80%, that seems to speak to a pretty healthy situation. And obviously the landlords may have a different opinion. They would want every single unit, occupied, or at least paid for. So that's an interesting idea of maybe, you know, representing the data in those sorts of terms, you know, like a health meter sort of thing.
Well,
you know, this.
I think if the vacancy rates got too low, you'd have a problem with people not being able to find affordable housing, right? So that's also, that's something I don't see us looking at either, right? And in this report doesn't tell us.
Yeah, this isn't specifically geared towards affordable housing, but it's, you know, when the vacancy rates are extremely low, that we have increased vacancies on an area, you know, that's showing that, you know, there's either a saturation of units or just undesirable units. Either way, people aren't living in them and they're not renting them. And so those landlords, those could be potentially become properties in distress. You know, there'll be disinvestment. You kind of get into a possible slumlord situation where they just can't find anybody to fill it, and they fall on hard times. And so, you know, when you do, I think what we try to do, at least on the planning side of things, is when we are scrutinizing new projects, certainly plan development projects, we are looking at affordability even in the core desirable areas, and we try to make sure that there's a pretty diverse mix of unit types, so that for someone even in a, you know, more of a high rolling type of development, there are at least units that might be smaller and potentially more affordable. It kind of goes without saying they would tend to be more affordable than the larger units, more bedroom units. So we've sort of come at it that way. We haven't quite reached the level where we're investigating the imposition of an affordable housing standard. You know, things that I've seen in other places I've worked, you know, where there's an actual requirement, you know, that 10% of the units are, you know, below market rate and are subsidized in some fashion. You know, I don't think we quite have achieved that level of unaffordability. You know, there's still, you know, plenty of opportunities in the community, and the community is compact enough that there's you know, you're never too far away from where you need to be, and so that helps contribute to affordability. But a diversity of unit types, I think, is the key at this point to ensure affordability.
Thank you.
Years ago, we used to, and I'm talking about the 80s and the 90s, as a staff, we used to sort of look at 10% vacancy, and if it reached 10% vacancy, then the market was probably ripe for some additional units. And Gary might want to, you know, put his knowledge into this discussion as well.
I would say what Ryan had said was pretty much on the mark, and same with Sally. Even in what we'd call conventional rentals opposed to student rentals, I mean, just normal turnover would give you that 7 to 10% vacancy. I mean, that's 1 month a year. In students, they try to run that a little tighter, but that I'm not sure where the industry is today on appraisals, but you know, if you put in for a loan, they pretty much count 7%. So I'd say you're in that point. If you get where we're at today in the low sub 5%, it doesn't create a lot of opportunity for choices for people, and prices tend to go up. And if you get to that 10% range, would be a good place. You know, then you're going to have prices being competitive. So I think Ryan's right on that 80 to 90%. You know, it depends which side of the fence you're on. If you're a tenant, you kind of want higher vacancies than students. Students are pretty astute. When they know there's a glut, they'll hold out and wait for prices to drop. And now with enrollment up, it's a pretty tight market over there. And my personal stuff with houses, I'm quite surprised at the occupancy. I'm 100% full. We did not have to cut any rents. We kept rents the same. And, you know, we thought going into this that it was going to be a problem, could be a major problem with kids not coming. So it's probably, there's a lot of moving parts out there. enrollment, housing, how many kids are gone. I don't know what you would have if you had those other 4,600 students on campus. I think it'd be pretty tight. And what typically happened in the past, that would overflow into Lafayette. So, I mean, I think even in that market's tight. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I hope
Yeah,
so.
that helps. Thank you.
Ryan, great job. Any other questions, comments?
Done.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. With that, Doc, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Welcome. Well, it's a little odd tonight. We get to wish someone well that, quite frankly, the Area Plan Commission is losing quite an asset. Somebody's going to go retire. Very selfish of you, I might add. And I'm going to blame it on COVID because that seems to be the theme. We're just going to say that COVID took Doc out of this. But with that, we have someone here that would like to say a couple words. Mayor?
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for letting me speak. How you doing, Carl?
I'm doing well, Mayor Dennis. Thank you for your confidence in me and either not contacting me at the end of December over the years to tell me, Carl, thanks for your service and we don't need you next year. But it's
I'll tell
really
you one
been a
thing.
pleasure. There are not very many old guys like me up there, are there, Gary? Obviously, we've had a lot of talent and a lot of commitment of folks over the years and who are serving right now. And I hope that I'm not forgetting someone, but I think that on the Planning Commission right now, I think that the only one who is more senior than I is Gary, who's smiling there. And as he knows well, and he's taken the notes over the years, he's taught me more than a thing or two. But I've just enjoyed working with everybody, and I appreciate your confidence, Mayor Dennis, in allowing me to continue.
Well, it was an easy choice, that's for sure. But we go way back, Carl. We go back to one of the times that I was brought in to the emergency room or the hospital on a backboard after one of my motorcycle crashes. So I figure if you're going to mess around and keep me healthy, I'm going to keep you as employed as long as I can. So I appreciate all of that. But on this side of the coin, you have been a valuable asset to our community and specifically to the city of West Lafayette. It's going to be very challenging to try and find somebody to replace you that has that understanding of business, that has that understanding of development, that has that understanding of growth, and then balances that with your passion for neighborhoods, for schools, and for our environment. Those are traits that, you know, individuals have some of, but rarely can you find the complete package, and you have definitely been that. But more importantly, you have proven to be somewhat scholarly in your approach to how we have been operating in my 13 years as mayor. You are always providing guidance to, specifically when I was newish, guidance on how to proceed. You involved yourself in some of our early development when we were starting our first growth spurt about 7 or 8 years ago. And I deeply appreciate that as a mayor, but I also deeply appreciate that as a citizen of West Lafayette. And you know, you have proven that a passion for a community is more than just a job, it's a calling. And you have answered that calling very well for the city of West Lafayette. So there are things we will be doing for you in the future, but we can't even do anything now with our wonderful boogeyman of COVID. But I just wanted to take a few minutes to publicly thank you for what you've done for our community, for the city of West Lafayette, and for me personally. Thank you so much, Carl.
You're very kind, John. Thank you for the opportunity.
Everybody on mute.
So Carl, with that, it's my honor to present you with this wonderful picture of a certificate on your on your screen. So it's a virtual certificate, one of the first that I've ever seen. We all know that this would be much better in person. I wish I could shake your hand. I think you know how much, or I hope you know how much all of us respect and appreciate all of you have done, especially after the words of the mayor there, and accomplished throughout your tenure. We wish you health and happiness in your retirement, and it wouldn't be 2020 if we didn't advise you to be safe. God bless, Carl.
Thank you very much, Jackson. Thanks to all of you for putting up with my questions and so forth over the years.
Well, I might just add, Carl, that it has been a pleasure serving with you. Early on, we were pretty busy on the Plan Commission. We worked through a lot of issues together, wrote a lot of ordinance, and I think working together, we came out with a better plan. So it's, I appreciate your community service, and it has been fun, and we'll miss you.
Thanks, Gary.
And I know we don't want to go on all night. Carl, this is Roland. Thank you. I served, I believe, as vice president under your presidency. We went through a couple challenging neighborhood plans together, and I want to extend the open invitation for you to come drink bitters with us anytime.
The next time we can do that, I would enjoy doing that.
The first round's on me. Thank you, Carl.
Sure.
And I'd like to say from staff's perspective, how much we appreciated the compassion with which you approached this job and your often sagacious questions. And the real certificate will be in the mail to you tomorrow.
I look forward to receiving it, Sally. Thanks.
Carl, best of luck. We're going to move on to the meeting, and we mean that, by the way. We'd like to give you a proper send-off when we can all join again. And everybody, and now we have it in the minutes. Rollins said he's buying the first round. Very happy about that. So here we go. We will move to the approval of the January Executive Committee, which we have no new subdivision requests. So director's report, Sally.
Thank you. The only thing I'd like to add, and I apologize, I should have put this in the report. I wanted to tell you how the office is operating at the moment with the ramping up of positivity all over the state and in our county. The county commissioners and the county health department came up with a great idea, which we began to implement on November 30th, and this applies to all departments in the county. They asked department heads to divide their staffs into two teams. So for 2 weeks, one team works in the office, one works from home, and then we switch. So I divided our staff into teams that would include all areas of our expertise so that in the office, all aspects of what we do can be covered for citizens who do come to the office. I think the idea is actually brilliant. If a staff member on one team would test positive, we don't have to close down the entire office. We just have to quarantine one team, and then the other team can come into the office and take over while that happens. So it's, I think, a really good idea with COVID having ramped up again, and it keeps us separated and at home where everybody's probably safe at least half the time. So that's the only thing I wanted to add. Oh, and just make sure that you look on the back and see that Tim has, as of yesterday, he got notice that he passed his PE. And for anybody who is or knows a PE, passing on the first try is a pretty big deal. So we're really happy for him.
Outstanding. Send our congrats to him, please.
I will.
Citizens' comments and grievances?
Do we need to accept the director's report, or has that already happened?
I don't believe that's a public item, is it, Sally? That needs to be.
It's not necessary.
Carl just
Thank
wants
you.
to make a final motion.
I was looking for the opportunity to second something, but
You know what? I would like someone to make a motion to accept the director's report as submitted.
well, I move that.
Carl moved it.
I will second that, Gary.
We have a
Thank you,
motion and a
Gary.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That carried. Well done, Carl.
Do we need a roll call vote for that?
We will start a timer for 1 minute unless we've got somebody on the call wishing for citizens' comments and grievances.
Timer started.
Thank you. Carl, while we're waiting, any big plans for retirement?
Wait for COVID to get over and then do a little bit more traveling. We were able to, but that's just more travel. Yep.
On car or bike?
All of the above.
Wonderful. Good for you. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Hey, Jackson, this is Steve Clevenger. Can I say something?
Certainly. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I just wanted to thank Carl for all those years on the BZA and for all
Thank
your
you
help.
very much. Thanks, Steve. It's a
You'll
real
be
pleasure
missed.
working with you.
Thanks for
Good
throwing
point,
that in there,
Steve, because he did double duty there.
Yeah.
Planning
did.
Commission and BZA.
Yep, thanks again, Carl.
Yes.
Okay, our
Jackson,
minutes
we are all
passed.
clear on comments.
Okay, no comments there. All, Merry Christmas. Enjoy the happy holidays. We'll take that motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
There you go.
Thanks, Carl.
We'll see you guys later. It's a good
See ya.
meeting.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, China.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
See you guys. Merry Christmas to y'all.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone.